Hello and welcome to TheFIX, a podcast about post-processing, Lightroom, Photoshop, plugins, mobile apps, essentially the cool and creative things we get to do with our images after the shoot. I'm Sean Duggan, your host, and on this week's show, my guest is Dan Marcolina, a designer and photographer based in Philadelphia. And Dan's going to be sharing some of his mobile photography work with us, as well as how he uses mobile apps to enhance and transform his images. If you're somebody who loves learning about new apps and the cool ways you can use them on your photographs, this is the show for you. It's going to be downright appalicious. Stay with us. Well, hey everybody, thanks for tuning in and joining me. I do appreciate that. Before we get into the interview with Dan Marcolina, I just have a few items to take care of real quick here. The first is regarding the book giveaway that's currently in progress. That was announced a couple weeks ago on episode 66 with Brian Matiash, and we're giving away a copy of Brian's book, The Visual Palette, Defining Your Photographic Style. And the entry period for that is 2 weeks. And today, as this show airs, Tuesday, May 31st, today is the very last day you have to enter. So you have until 11:59 p.m. Tonight, Pacific Standard Time, to enter that giveaway. So if you have not already done so, head over to thisweekinphoto.com/TheFIX, click on the episode 66 Brian Matiash show, and there are instructions on the page there for how you can enter. And I want to give a shout out to Rocky Nook, the publisher of that book, and the sponsor of the book giveaway that we have here on TheFIX. Really appreciate the fact that they are supporting the show in that way and giving our viewers and listeners the opportunity to win cool books. Thanks, Rocky Nook. Okay, next up, I have a couple of workshops I want to mention. I will be teaching a week-long workshop at the Main Media Workshops, August 7th through the 13th, called Creative Seeing, Refining Your Photographic Vision. And that's just a wonderful place to take a workshop up there on the coast of Maine. Very beautiful. And this is going to be a workshop all about, as the title would suggest, creativity. Both creativity in terms of camera work and creativity in terms of interpreting the images that you capture back in the digital darkroom. And then apropos the topic of today's episode of TheFIX, I do have a mobile photography themed workshop coming up in the San Francisco Bay Area on Saturday, July 30th. That is going to be at the Image Flow in Mill Valley, California. And that's a workshop called iPhonography, Creative Capture and Processing Techniques. And if you're somebody who loves to take pictures with your mobile phone and process them on the phone or maybe on your tablet device, that's going to be kind of a one-day deep dive workshop, immersion therapy in creative mobile capture and processing techniques. And in spite of the name referencing iPhonography, that workshop is definitely open to Android users. We are going to be covering a variety of apps, and many of them are cross-platform that are available on both the Android platform and on iOS. So if you are interested in that, again, Saturday, July 30th in Mill Valley, California. And I will put links to both of those workshops in the show notes for this page. If you scroll down towards the bottom of the page where there's the information about me, that's where you can find the links for that. All right, so without further ado, let me fire up our split screen cam and we will go and join Dan Marcolina and talk to him about his mobile photography. Well, Dan Marcolina, thanks for stopping by and joining me on TheFIX. Welcome to the show.
Sure.
So I first became aware of your work when your book on iPhone processing came out, the iPhone
there it is.
Obsessed book. Yeah, there it is. I know. In fact, Peach Pit actually sent me several copies of this when it first came out, and I gave them away as prizes in workshops that I was teaching, like at the Main Media Workshops and other ways. Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
it was great. And this was, I think, one of the first sort of process-specific camera phone processing iPhone books that came out. Is that correct?
I like to think so, and I did do some digging on that, so I could say it more confidently. I would say it's the first mobile photography book that showed multiple apps being used together. I think there was one that just used one app that showed some examples earlier on.
Right.
Maybe 6 months before, but this is the first one that showed all that and had the QR codes in it where you could scan and little videos would come up and show you each of the processes.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty cool book from that standpoint, not only, I think, from different kinds of apps, ideas, and it was, but the QR codes, the Microsoft tag codes, Microsoft called it the first truly interactive book. And that was kind of nice too. And
then you eventually took that to be even more interactive, where you had a mobile version of it, right? Or a mobile.
Yeah, I figured I had all these recordings of tutorials in the book. There's probably 5 hours worth of video showing off different ways to work and images and websites and that kind of thing. I had all this content, and I was just getting into digital publishing through the Adobe DPS. And figured, let's roll it into that. And so, the iPad Companion came out, and it had some new content and some of the content from the book as well. And that's still in the iTunes store. iPhone Obsessed Companion is what it's called.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes. We're going to get back to the mobile stuff, but you have been active in the digital design world for quite a long time, essentially from the beginnings. I know that you started the first all-digital design firm in Philadelphia. So give us a little bit of a background on your design firm and the type of work you've been doing over the years.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, like you've been in this a long time too, but as a young designer, I learned traditional design concept ideas, never had a computer going through school. And as I went into my career, in the 8th year of my career, the iMac came out. And I said to my boss, we got to get, another computer. And he said, well, maybe next year. And at that point I said, you know what, I'm gone. And it was the same year that Photoshop came out, and really was the springboard. Really, Adobe's been my springboard all along. With their different applications coming out, Photoshop being the first one that allowed me to combine my photography love of images and love of typography and collage, a little ADHD. So combining all these medias together into images, was astounding to me. And of course, it took a half hour to do a radial blur. And 1 megabyte file was huge. And if you wanted to get a file larger than 1 megabyte off your computer, you segment it and segment it across 10 floppy disks. So it was and no one could tell you how to do this. There was no internet. So it was a real labor of love. And I just had great thrills out of creating these collage images. And from there, we went to interactive early on, before CD-ROMs were even in computers. We did our first interactive piece, Macromedia Director, 1.0. And then through that, we learned video processing through Adobe Premiere. And then all along the way, we cruised with Dreamweaver, doing web stuff and integrating print, web, and video. And then, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, along came digital publishing, again, led by Adobe. The DPS, we did The World Without Photoshop. If you haven't seen that, that's a fun thing to get. It's in iTunes. We did that in the early stages of the Adobe DPS. So it's combining all that stuff together. It's been, I've always sort of tried to stay on the bleeding edge. I'm not making any money, but I'm having a lot of fun, because when you're on the bleeding edge, as you know, you got no help. You got no books. You're learning and, spending a lot more time. You're giving away secrets or whatever to other people along the way. And now we're into VR and augmented reality, which is just sort of sprung up overnight. I know VR has been around for 20 years, but 2016 is the year it has really been born. So we're really excited about 360
kind of really
video
hitting its stride now.
Yeah, it really is. And it's pretty exciting. The 360 cameras. Now you're dealing with a 5,000 pixel wide video stream that has to wrap around this sphere, and editing that in After Effects. It's always been it seems like every 5 years something sort of turns the corner, and it's been a great career. And there's a link, I think you'll hopefully include it in the stuff later. It's got our history. It's basically our history of what we've done and how it's been guided by Adobe products.
Yeah, no, I was watching that, and that's a really good overview. It goes through, your whole kind of the origin story, and through print design, and then interactive multimedia, and Photoshop, and video, and digital publishing. Yeah, no, really good. And your website is the design website is really welcoming and fun to explore. And I've always felt that photographers, could learn a lot from designers, and vice versa. Of course, there's definitely some overlap and cross-pollination there. Yeah. So very impressive stuff in your roster of projects you've done.
Thank you.
And one of the projects that I was really delighted to see there, and I was unaware of your involvement in this, and I'm going to bring this up because our audience is concerned with post-processing in Photoshop and all that, and obviously photography. But back in 2010, I think this debuted at Photoshop World, or maybe at Adobe's 20th anniversary celebration for Photoshop. But Russell Brown, the senior creative director at Adobe Systems, who really needs no introduction.
My friend and yours.
Those people who know Photoshop.
Everyone else. Yes.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. He gave this presentation that was based on centered around an overhead projector. And he had props and stuff on the overhead screen and stuff. And then, I don't know, midway through, or maybe a third of the way through the video, or the presentation rather, things started getting a little bit ambiguous, and it looked as if there was actually layers and depth and things that just couldn't possibly be happening on the top of an overhead projector screen. Right. And I was fortunate enough to see this live in San Francisco at Adobe's event that year, and it was just a wonderful presentation. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes for people to watch. But tell us a little bit about how that project came to be.
Well, I've known Russell really since we started using Photoshop so early on. Our work was on the original install discs of Photoshop 2 and 3 and 4, I think. So I got to know Russell through that. And all along the way, every year or every 2 years, he sends a wacky, as he uses the word wacky a lot, project our way. I think the first thing we did was Wacky Wardrobe, where you could dress yourself up in costumes. And I'm talking 1990 something.
That must have been for Photoshop layers or something, right? You had little costumes.
I know it was a custom application we built around costumes. I mean, he's always, as you know, and many people know, he's very into costumes, dressing himself up. And that was the start of it. But yeah, and then, all along the way, we've done different things. And then the best moment of my career, really, one of the top three, I'd have to say, is when he called me and said, Dan, we want you to do the video that, designates the 20th anniversary of Photoshop. And of course, when the phone rings from Russell, you get super excited, but super nervous, because it's going to be a whirlwind of creativity and processes that you've never even tried. So yeah, he he loves analog. He loves the feeling of things just being mechanical. And, so he said, I want to use an overhead projector somehow. I want to bring these things in, and we co-developed this thing, step by step, and came up with this idea where it looks, he's showing, everybody knows an overhead projector. It's like when you were in school as a kid. Maybe some of the younger viewers don't know what it is, but it was basically it shows you what's on the surface as you're working with it. So he had these overhead transparencies. He'd slide them in, and you'd see him in one case, he he was showing off his 10 most favorite features of Photoshop over the years, or his 20 favorite features. And one of them was healing brush, for instance. So he brings his hand down. You see his hand on the surface down here, and you see he puts an X-Acto blade down next to it and a brush. And people start to gasp in the audience. They're like, now let me show you one of the features from Photoshop. I forget what it was, Photoshop 5. And see if you can guess what this is. He picks up the X-Acto knife and starts to slice his wrist. And his hand, although it's still moving, is separated from his arm. And you see the green, of course, green blood, because he's, a Vulcan, come out. Yes. And honestly, the audience, and we showed it 4 or 5 times in different parts of the world to different audiences, and everybody says gasp, because his hand's actually still moving. And he says, wait for it now, see if we can guess. He brings the brush in and he starts to brush his wrist, and it heals. Healing
and
brush.
Then he lifts his hand up.
And you can see the healing, you can see the brush in his hand, and he lifts his hand, he says, all good, all good. So it's a bit of magic, and let me know if your audience figures it out. The best compliment was when one of the audience, John Knoll, came up to me afterwards and said, you had me going there. I didn't know it was going on until, 3/4 of the way through, how you were actually doing it. So it was a great night, and it's always great to work with Russell and Adobe, because they really, I feel like part of the company, because they've really carried my career. Yeah.
Well, and just to clarify for listeners out there who may not be familiar who John Knoll is one of the Knoll brothers, John Knoll and Thomas Knoll, who developed Photoshop, created it. And John Knoll, apart from that, has had a long career at Lucasfilm and Industrial Light and Magic, heading up their special effects division in many famous movies. So if you were able to pull one over John Knoll, that was pretty good.
It was a great night.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I will definitely put a link to that in the show notes. And if you out there in internet land have not seen that, you should definitely take a look. It is such a fun video, and the effects are great. And if you're familiar with some of the history of Photoshop, it will you'll recognize a lot of these tools and go, oh yeah, that showed up in version 4 or whatever, and just really creatively done. And it was a pleasure for me to watch it again.
We did update it for 2000 to the 25th anniversary, and there's like 5 more effects. Although when we when he photographed that at I think he did it at Creative Live, and they used a camera angle that gives it away, and I just can't show it. I won't show it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fun too. If you dig in Creative Live, you'll find the 25th anniversary show of that. So where we used we added Creative Cloud, and we had a smoke gun we shot into the audience, and it was a lot of fun stuff. But
and so in each of the live presentations of that, are you there?
I have been
during the live.
We've done other things for him, similar things, and they're hopefully in the link you send out to for EG 5 and 6. We did similar kind of magical, like we did it with an iPad where he looks like he's playing with a spoon. He's making soup on an iPad. He's actually chopping a carrot on an iPad, and I like that one too. It's called the Cosmic Soup.
No, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, Russell Brown Productions are always fun to be involved with. I'm going to be working with him at in a pre-conference workshop at Photoshop World coming up in July on mobile photography creativity. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure the costumes will be involved.
Yes, that'll be great.
So speaking of mobile photography, let's segue to that, because that's kind of how I first became aware of your work. Just some really wonderful mobile work, and how did the mobile, I don't know, revolution is kind of a overused term, but how did that mobile transition when photography really kind of was experiencing that new field that was opened up for us initially by the iPhone? Right. How did that impact your work and your creativity?
Well, I've always, carried all sorts of cameras around, from 35 to 2.25 to 4x5, and I really, really like toy cameras. And you might see some in the background there. I got, probably 200 plastic cameras, Holgas, and Diana.
Comrade.
Yes, and
yeah, me too.
And then I finally got an iPhone. I think it was iPhone 3S, where the resolution seemed like, hey, well, this is kind of cool. I can grab things quickly. I don't have to worry about film. I don't have to worry about. I see it right away. And then I started taking pictures and digging for these little gems, these little apps. At the time, there weren't a whole lot in 2000 and. Oh, geez, going back 2000 and when would that have been? 9?
Yeah, something like that. I think the book came out in 2011, so it would have been
2009. And I said, "Wow, this is some of these apps are like lo-fi apps. There was one called lo-fi. There was pinhole camera. Some of these effects and looks are exactly the kinds of things that I would have loved to gotten out of the Diana camera." But it's all about processing the film and going in the dark room. And it was a long process. And, being a little ADHD, it was nice to have this instant gratification, this instant reinforcement. So I it was like when Photoshop first came out for me, really, because I would run to work and stay till 2 a.m. to do this Photoshop stuff because I was so obsessed with making images that no one had ever really seen before. So when the iPhone started coming out with these little apps that, you could have done in Photoshop, you could have done with the plugin, but like I say to people, Photoshop is a production tool. The iPhone is a discovery tool where you can sit back and, do it while you're watching TV, do it while you're waiting in line, and look for the longest lines now to process pictures, So you can get in there and really organically create an image and really sort of sculpt an image by not only using one app, but 2 and 3 apps. And so that's when I was getting very excited and finding these little apps and collecting them and thinking, boy, this is going somewhere. So I was actually at a dinner with Russell Brown at a Peach Pit dinner, and we were drinking. I was actually doing the hula. I don't know how. I don't do that kind of thing normally, but and a woman next to me from Peach Pit said, "Hey, would you like to write a book?" I said, "Well, I don't know. What would we do?" And I had my phone. I was taking pictures. She says, "Well, what about iPhone?" I said, "Hey, man, I really, really am enjoying it, and I think there's a big story to tell there." And I continue to believe that. And that was early on, and it only has grown. I mean, the kinds of things you can do. And the kinds of things you have to know, there is just so much. I really think that what you need to know to do Photoshop or photography work on the iPhone is almost as much as you need to know for professional photography and lenses and all that kind of thing, because there's so many ways to do things, so many things to look out for as far as resolution and sharpness and how to transfer things and how to get it into Photoshop afterwards and CMYK, all these kinds of raw processing things. Coming from my background of doing huge Photoshop documents that I've printed to 40 feet tall, I understand what it means to, the workflow that needs to be in place to make the quality just right. So that's what I have talked about in the book and elsewhere, is how to make sure. A lot of people in the early days were like, "Oh yeah, it looks great on my screen." I said, "Well, you're using an app that only saves at 640. Did you know that?"
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. So
yeah.
So there's so much to know, and I've written like 3 other iPhone, iPad books, and they're all free now. I sold them for years, but I'd rather have 100 people download my books a week rather than 10. Because, for $2, I'm not going to be rich. And I made no money, really made no money on this, because people who are doing iPhoneography are buying apps that are, they're even free or $1. To sell a book for $20 was like counterintuitive. It's not a profession. It's a hobby. So the whole, financial model for me, I was very early on too.
Mm-hmm.
So I've donated all these books in iTunes, and they're pretty cool. I mean, we can talk about them, but I guess I got off track.
Yeah, no.
Where are we?
No. In terms of the way that mobile photography, and that's such a, we're going to have to find another term because, obviously most cameras are mobile, unless you're talking about the Polaroid 20 by 24 camera, which is mobile in the sense that the pyramids are mobile or Stonehenge is mobile, maybe a little bit more. But, all cameras we can carry with us. But obviously mobile photography is referring to photography we do with our mobile devices, aka phones, and now tablets, I suppose, to a lesser extent. But how have you found that the ability to take the picture, look at it, perhaps process it right there on the scene, how has that influenced the type of photographs that you find yourself making, or the type of creative discovery you find?
Yeah, it's a common question, and there's all sorts of common answers to this. One is it's always with you, and you'll discover things. You'll be looking for pictures all day long now, which is kind of a distraction, honestly. But since you have a camera with you, there are things that you would take, like an orange peel that you just unpeeled, that laying on the table against some, the color of orange against the color of blue or something just looks great. You take it, you save it. It's a collection tool. It's almost as though it's a memory tool. It's collecting your memories as you see them during the day, so you can process them later. Whereas if you had a 35 millimeter camera, you'd take it out and it would be very conspicuous. It wouldn't be as organic. So and being able to see the picture really large I have the larger iPhone here, so you can preview it and see it and get it. It's a collection. It's almost like collecting memories rather than taking photos to me. And then the ability to then quickly process them and share them and get comments on them. And it's a J curve of, learning. You see someone do this. Yeah. And the good and bad news there is that styles go in and out really quickly. But I think that the community still cares for good quality concepts that are executed in the appropriate manner. It's not just putting a filter on a picture to make it look good. It's trying to draw the picture, the story of the picture, out of the pixels in a way that emphasizes it, and really enhances the feeling or the storyline in it. And I really believe mobile photography is as big of a revolution as color photography was, or even, going from the big box camera to the 35 millimeter, the Kodak moment where the switch was. I think it's as big as those two put together, because so many more people have gotten into photography because it's so much more accessible. The apps to be able to create things are cheap and accessible. And again, the learning and sharing and the J curve of creativity is in history, I think, going to go down as probably the most important photography moment, or one of them at least.
Well, I've always felt, since I got into working with mobile photography and shooting with my iPhone. The first one that I got was the iPhone 4. So I think you got the 3S, I got the 4. So I probably got into it just after you did. But in a way, and some photographers, maybe more old school photographers who kind of look down their nose at camera phone photography, but they kind of poo-poo this statement or this idea. But I almost think that shooting with an iPhone or a camera phone, Android device, whatever, it is in a way a very pure form of photography to me, because there is so little time elapsed between the idea to make a picture, making the picture, and then seeing it and revising it if necessary. Now, obviously, we can do that on regular digital cameras. We can see it, but not as big as we can on our mobile devices. Right. Plus, the ability to work it right there on the scene, and process it. That has really informed the way I have actually taken pictures, where I might, if I'm doing a panorama of something or just a multi-image stitch, and I put it together right there on the scene, and I see that, I missed, capturing data in this area of the scene, so I need to do it again. So in a way, it's kind of like, the en plein air school of painting, where the painter will set up their easel out in the landscape, and they're there in the scene painting the landscape, seeing the landscape and rendering it there. That kind of is what, shooting with the camera phone and processing it there on scene is kind of like, in a way.
Yeah, I think it's there's a great line in one of my ebooks, and I'm looking down because I want to read this. If you can hear me, all right. In Mobile Masters 1, I talk about the impact of mobile photography and why it's different than traditional photography and why it's important. But it comes down to in 1891, Peter Emerson, an early promoter of photography as an art form, one of these guys who was trying to convince the world, like we're trying to convince the world, that mobile photography is a new art form. In a way, I think it is. He was doing the same thing back then, and when many people thought, "Oh, it's just it's not creative enough. You don't have enough control." Blah blah blah. He was in despair about the limits of photography processing, and he finally decided that photography would forever remain a minor art because it could not be manipulated at will. That was his quote. Well, I think we've turned the corner. I think we've turned a corner in a lot of ways. Digital has been around for 25 years or more, and the tools then were looked upon as poo-poo. But and the tools were hard to use. They were a little bit, an elite group could only use them. Like a designer in the early days, $600 for a tool like that they were slow. People were unfamiliar with the language of digital manipulation. But I think in 2010 or 2010 and now, we've turned that corner of that digital divide, and I think we can, as a group, as a large group, manipulate images at will. Once you get to know the tools and the language and the kinds of ways to do the workflow, you're creating images. And believe me, I've looked at, for buying artwork for annual reports and illustrating this and that, I've hired lots of artists and photographers from around the world for many years. And the images that I've seen come out of the mobile world, if you look at Mobile Masters 1 and 2, which are two of my iBooks, there is an incredible depth of vision and even naive vision. People creating things because they don't have the experience. They don't know really what they're doing, but they're creating things from a spot where we can now manipulate things from the heart rather than from like, oh, look at this filter. Yeah. And there's an incredible artistry going on around the world because of the mobile movement.
Yeah, no, I agree. The other thing too that I found with my own photography is that the mobile photography platform, being able to shoot with my phone, has caused me to explore areas of photography that maybe I wasn't that active in before with my bigger cameras. So one of those that I enjoy a lot is, for want of a better term, street photography. Mm-hmm. And, with my larger DSLR, this is not really practical for street photography. Obviously, there are smaller cameras you can, mirrorless cameras you can use for that now. But I really enjoy doing street photography with the phone because it's not as obvious. Right, everybody's got a phone in their hand, everybody's taking pictures. And it's just easier to move through a crowded space, whether it's a street or a museum, and work on pictures like that. Obviously, there are limitations. It's you got to be up close to people, right? But it's I was down at the LA County Museum of Art last weekend, and I love shooting there. And I love taking pictures of people interacting with the artwork in museums. Yeah. And there was this a 3-dimensional maze on the wall. And there was a couple contemplating it, and I had a moment wide-angle lens, bayoneted onto my iPhone, and it allowed me to get fairly close to them. But I just instantly, I love metaphor in photography. So the idea of this couple regarding this maze, my mind kind of spun out on the metaphorical implications of that, of two people contemplating a maze and what that all might mean, the maze of relationships and finding our way in the world. And, I took several shots and, I got one that really worked for me on that metaphorical level. But, that's not something that I could easily do with a more conspicuous camera.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the inconspicuous, people are definitely getting on it, though. I try to do what I used to do maybe 5 years ago now with the shooting from the hip. I got a few people chasing me down the streets because they catch on. Because I'm 6'5" and I stand out a little bit already. So but yeah, the one little tip I'll give your viewers, they probably already know this, but if you tap and hold down on the exposure button, you can take 100 pictures a second, really. I think maybe it's 50 pictures a second. Just hold it down and you can talk with your hands like I was a magician as a kid, so it's all about misdirection. So if you're looking this way and you're talking that way and you're holding the button down, you're talking. And I even have a strap, one of the straps that go back here, it's not on here now, unfortunately, but it allows me to sort of just hold the phone at any angle at all, because it's basically just a rubber strap, and I would recommend that for doing conspicuous shooting. And then there's apps. So
you're able to put your fingers on the back of the phone to the strap like that.
I actually have it here, so I'll show you. But so it makes it a lot more fluid and a little more natural feeling that you're not taking a picture. And of course, you can take the picture from the volume button as well now, which makes it a little less conspicuous. But here's the strap. And so, what I do is I actually turn the camera upside down. So the button is up at the top here.
Yeah.
And I can control, the camera from here. So I have the camera always here. And then, just hold this down and just move it around naturally. I'm taking pictures. And even if you take a picture upside down, you probably know this already, but it'll make it right side up if the camera's upside down. So don't worry about taking the camera right side up. You can do this. Think about, and then there's apps that, make it look like you're making a phone call, sneaky pics, and it looks like you actually can have a voice on the other line, and you're taking pictures as you walk by someone. You look like you're talking on the phone, so.
Yes, all in the name of truth, beauty, and art.
Yes.
Not the name of creepy stalker stuff.
No, right. Yes, exactly.
But it's funny. I was just imagining and thinking of a strap exactly like that the other day when I was out and about.
There's a bunch of them, and as a matter of fact, I have a Mobile Masters one that has Mobile Masters on it. I give away at my lectures. It's basically just one of these wrist things.
Oh, okay.
And this is a smaller. This is a smaller one for the smaller phones. I can't put it on mine, but it just basically straps around the phone. It does obscure part of the screen in the front, but it works the same way. As a matter of fact, it's a little more snug. So get a wristband and rubber, live strong band, and put that on.
What I was doing in the museum the other day is I had this mount here. Let's hold that up so we can see it, which is made by Me Photo.
Okay.
And what's cool about this is it's got this little swivel, and it'll mount the phone either horizontally, or vertically, depending.
Oh, nice.
And so what I did was I put my phone in here, and I was actually walking around holding the phone like this, and I was using the app Slow Shutter Cam.
Okay.
And this allowed me this sort of more stable tripod-esque platform to hold the phone, which is a little bit more stable than this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the earbuds in, and of course you can trigger the you can't do it with Slow Shutter Cam, but on some apps you can trigger the shutter with the earbud volume. But I walked through the museum just sort of taking pictures like this, and with Slow Shutter Cam anyway, it did allow me a more stable platform as I did that.
I have another attachment too that has a mirror that looks like you're shooting a picture one way, but you're actually shooting the picture the other. You've probably seen that too.
I've heard of them. Yeah. In fact, I remember one of those. I used to work in a camera store a long, long time ago, back in the old analog days of photography, and there was a little device like that, kind of creepy.
Yeah, but like you said,
all in the name of truth and beauty.
Well, I have some great sequences I can show you when we get into the images real quick. With that whole shooting as it's all about when you're walking along, there's something developing in front of you.
Yes.
You can see it about to happen. And it's sort of like a bell goes off in my head when I see things coming together, either it's a graphic, feeling thing or a juxtaposition of something that's about to cross my plane. I'm just like, okay, got to get ready. And you walk up to it and shoot it as you go, because you never know when they're going to discover you or it's going to change. Just keep shooting. Mm-hmm. You can always crop in. Don't be afraid to crop, push, plod, just sort of stretch these apps as far as they will go, because you can discover some incredible things by taking a late night shot that looks like crap. A lot of the shots I end up loving are the ones that I think are throwaway shots, and it's just something about the shot. You just draw it out with exposure or some graphic technique, and it becomes something much more.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also a different, in terms of the post-processing, there's a different visual aesthetic and almost visual expectation from the shots that you are working with on the phone versus something you'd be taking with a larger, traditional camera.
Yeah, no pixel peeping. It's at your thumb. It's not like you're looking at it. You're not tied to you're not leaning forward, looking at everything and zooming in. You're relaxed. You're sitting back. It's laying back rather than leaning forward. That's the difference between processing on a computer and a mobile device. That's
a great quote. I love that. Laying back instead of leaning forward. I like it. Well, listen, let's fire up your screen share and let's just take a look at some of the stuff you have to show us.
Okay, now turning to the screen share here, you can see that I have a presentation. What we did for Russell Brown, actually, for Adobe Max. And it takes you through, on the first page here, you can see the different ebooks that I've done, the actual book in the background here. But I'm going to flip the page now. I'm going to use my iPad and slide the page over. And here, this is a year old, this list, and I have a few more favorites on this list. Are you still with me, Sean?
Indeed I am.
Okay.
Indeed I am.
And you can see how I track things and how I organize my iPhone with apps, because one of the things is you want to be able to move fluidly in your process. So organize it the way you feel comfortable. But the way I've done it is we have all the camera apps that take pictures in various ways. And it's not just straightforward pictures, like Slow Shutter is not a straightforward. Harris Camera is another one that I'll talk about in a minute. Grunge apps, Vintage Scene is probably my favorite. And these are all apps that give you, a rough, analog feel to things. HDR apps, these are some of my favorites there. Film Look apps are ones that add, traditional film borders or TTV through the viewer kinds of effects. And down to the painting apps in the lower left-hand corner, there's a bunch of them. And, you got to be careful about painting apps. It's easy to make things look like a painting, but is it the right thing to do to an image? Or, do you want to combine that with a tune look to give it a completely different look that's more intentional, following through on your vision for your image rather than just adding effect for fun? So in tune looks, there's Tangled FX, which is absolutely my favorite tune look. Tune look is like the black and white line look. Tune Paint,
right? Yeah,
my favorite for a long time. And then there's Triangulator, which is really awesome and cool. And then there's Light and Blur. There's all-in-ones, and I'm not done yet. There are break apart apps like Disseminate, the very best break apart app. It makes things breaks the image in pieces and reforms it in different kind of cool ways. These are all break apart apps. Add-in apps are things where you can add layers in. 360 apps. Of course, 360, you know what that is. Type apps, and There's a bunch of cool ones there and a couple new ones that are really cool. Unusual apps, 3D apps, production apps. When I talk about production apps, I think I talk about apps that are, just clean up images, brighten, sharpen, overall, levels, curves, that kind of thing for the most part. And then there's video apps. So let me go through this presentation here now. And we start off with this montage of flashing images. And, this is sort of all the different kinds of effects you can put on different images. As I scroll across this, you can sort of see some of the images that are mixed in. So we're going to talk about editing now. I think what defines mobile photography differently than, traditional photography is, number one, image discovery, found moments, like we talked about already. So you can see this image here of this kid. And again, this was shooting from my hip. Would have never wanted to sort of made it obvious that I'm shooting this little boy with this devil. I mean, because that's a little creepy, like you say. But here's the situation. This is one of those moments where I'm like, there's something cool here. Let me just inconspicuously grab my camera and start shooting. So yeah, it's about image discovery or image invention. Image discovery is you have your camera with you and you're finding interesting moments like this one develop in front of your eyes. And then you take a bunch of images and you find the one like this one, which I thought had the best kind of composition. But of course, the cropping wasn't right because you're shooting from your hip. It's not necessarily level all the time. But then if you crop and process, in this case, you can see the processing technique in the lower left-hand corner, dramatic black and white and Snapseed. I love dramatic black and white. It's probably the best for me anyway, the black and white app. Any app from TWiP is really worth having. So that's kind of that phototone moment where I hear a bell going off, and then by taking the image and processing it in a way that makes it more iconic, makes it tell the story by isolating, getting rid of the color, isolating, you do a little vignetting. Don't even worry about the grain and the out of focus. It sort of adds to the effect. Another instance of this is where I walk in. I love these cement factory places. I walk into this place and I say hello because I don't want to surprise anybody. But the guy at the end of the hall here, which you can start to see come forward, couldn't hear me. He's an older guy. I guess he's hard of hearing. I say hello, and I'm shooting all along the way. The cat passes by, and I finally get right up next to him. He still doesn't know I'm there. And that's the great thing about shooting with a mobile phone, too. It can be silent. You can't hear the shutter go. So he's completely clueless. And then it's taking that image and then just adding a little bit of processing to it to sort of emphasize the moment and the feeling of the light and, focus. I call this one Praying for Good News.
That's a good title.
In a couple different ways and again, don't fear processing. I end up loving I may process it 10 different ways. I may end up loving 3 of them, and never, it's hard to sort of. It's the one that gives the image the most impact that you choose. This was with Pixelorama from Autodesk. Again, here's this moment. This is a graphic kind of moment, a moment that's happening that you, as a designer, you see these. Architectural and juxtaposition of color and shape that are just beautiful. And you're just like, holy shit. And this kid with the green jacket's coming out, and, you get him to the point where you want him, and he turns to the camera and you snap, and it's like, oh, wow, that's the picture. That's the one. But let's clean that up. So by using a perspective app, Snapseed Selective Adjust, like in Snapseed now, you can sort of adjust some perspective. And then you can selectively adjust colors. You can tap on the image area that you want, and then, just isolate those pixels and get, that color saturated more. And then you can see, I'll go back. You can see how the perspective changes. Yeah. Back and forth here. And just that, making things a little more geometric makes it feel a little more intentional. It's all about intention.
Snapseed is an amazing app.
It really is.
It's quite amazing that it's a free app. I mean, there's so much you can do with it.
And they just, I think, they made all their their apps free. Nick software.
Yeah.
All their desktop apps are now free. Give a shout out for John Knack, who is in charge of that software nowadays. He's from Adobe originally. So here's another instance where it's this moment where you see it happening. You're shooting from the hip again. You see this woman in the corner of the frame. You see her coming towards this exercise area. And just as she's about to leap with her tutu on, she's half drunk and she's trying to reach for this was, the magic moment, the definitive moment. But then to take it and amplify it a little bit and simplify and emphasize, the structure of the image with color and, shadows, eliminating some textures. You really kind of emphasize the moment of impact here. She never did reach the thing, so.
A little bit too much inebriation, huh?
Yeah, again, this is like shooting in the fog is a great thing to do too, because it's so mysterious and can really add a lot of. So this was a father and child, and just had to wait for the kid to turn his head a little bit so you see his profile more with his father. Look for those small things, of course, and then again with some processing, just bring it up to its bare minimum. And again, a great scene. I couldn't believe this one. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So perfect. Just a little bit of cropping, a little bit of HDR work on this, emphasizing the yellow. Go in there with the selective adjust tool. There is a new app that does selective adjust a lot better than Snapseed. I hate to say that, but and I can't. Let me see if I can pull it up here. All in ones. I think it's Polar. Have you seen Polar? Polar. They have a radial mask, a gradient mask, a color mask, and it does the same thing, but a lot more. You can control a lot more with it.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I've used. FilterStorm has a really good implementation of. Gradient masks and radial masks, but its interface is a little bit more complex and hard to get through.
Well, what's nice about the one in Snapseed and the one in Polar is that you can actually select the pixel that you want to, the pixel range that you want to affect. And in Polar, you can really change the threshold on that, so you can really expand or contract the actual area, like the yellow in this padding. You could really and really do a better job, I think. So I can run through a couple of these, and then I'm going to jump to image invention. How are we on time?
We're good.
Okay.
We're good. We got about 15 or so minutes left.
Okay. So here's another image. Again, it's one of these images that most people, I don't know, overlook maybe. I mean, I just think it's got this storyline going on here, but to then emphasize it with a little bit of, in this case, Snapseed frames. And the frames in Snapseed are really, really good. Another good app for frames is Awesome Camera Awesome.
Right, yeah, I have that one.
They have some great frames in there, and I really only use that for the frames and the overlays. It really has some nice textures. And they haven't updated it in a while, and I think it's a little old on the vine, but and here's another instance of, finding a picture where you wouldn't necessarily have your camera. Like you're driving along from, down the shore or whatever, and you see this situation where this free chair, it just was funny to me. And so then I just cropped it and emphasized this whole tape thing going on here, which was...
Yeah, I mean, the tape thing is what makes it funny, that they were just so really overzealous with the tape on that. Maybe they had to be because it was wicker or something.
Right. It's that, the elegant wicker and this just sort of haphazard tape thing. And just, the shore, and you can smell the shore. I don't know. At least I can now, knowing where the picture was taken, but it was just one of those sort of funny.
Did you take the chair home with you?
No, I didn't. I should have. And like I said, don't be afraid to take pictures at dark. I mean, this is a picture taken with, the old, what's it called? Jesus. That's my one problem, remembering all these apps as I talk about them. That's my one weak point.
There's so many apps, so little time.
And I'm referencing It's the famous one. It does the processing as you take the picture. Jesus.
Not slow shutter cam.
No, the original sort of, processing as you go app, and I just am blanking here. Everybody is in the audience is saying, I know what that is. I know what that is. We'll come back to it. Anyway, so don't be afraid. I mean, here's a situation where the blur and the darkness really help. But of course, with a little processing, it helps.
Yeah.
And again, here's a situation where you would never have a camera. This was the day after my father's funeral, and I really honestly didn't think I would ever do this. But the moment was so palpable and real that and the light coming in, and my mom had to leave this house, which she's lived in for the longest time. Some of the last moments sitting at this kitchen table where we all grew up.
Yeah, very poignant.
And then just taking that and cropping it to the essentials, and then maybe adding a little bit of lens flare. This is Mextures. Mextures is in my all-in-one group. Mextures, there's a bunch of all-in-one apps like Mextures, Bistic, Mix, Enlight, Formulas, Do
you find that you, I did a show with Dan Burkholder a couple months back or something,
right.
But the one of the things we talked about is that, at least for me anyway, it seems that with apps, there's so many of them that you get into these sort of like little tracks or grooves where you sort of settle on a certain suite of apps that you tend to sort of go to most of the time, and then you discover a new app which sort of sends you off in a new direction and a new groove. Do you find that the same with your own?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was writing about it and had to talk about it and lecturing about it, which I'm not really doing as much anymore because I was losing money doing that, not spending attention on my design firm, but I had to keep up on everything. But now I kind of go back to my old favorites and discover new ones, like Polar is a really well thought out app. So then getting to the next picture, and again, this was truly one of these moments where I had to shoot like totally inconspicuously and very quickly. And so I just fired without even looking. And I got this image of this. Well, let me go to the next image. With a little cropping, a little editing, you go from something that's sort of maybe a little too abstract to really grasp to something that's, funny. And this is the morning after kind of thing. Who are these people? Yeah. Just the color and the design of the situation with the person, and they really grabbed my attention.
It's so satisfying sometimes, and that picture is a great example of it, is the just unexpected color synchronicities that you run across accidentally in the real world, because the pink in the woman's outfit just goes so wonderfully with that kind of teal green color.
Right,
the architecture.
That's half of that, like, you don't even think about it. It's just sort of like you don't even notice it. You don't even notice it till later on. A lot of times, it's important as a designer for me anyway. There's a balanced picture, so the blue that's jutting out down here is counter. I don't think about this stuff, but it's when it feels right. Then you move on.
Yeah.
You don't try to overwork it. And again, another situation where I was at Macworld or something, and this guy, I guess, was asked to hold this baby unexpectedly, and of course, I was a little afraid to take a picture of an officer, but he seemed okay with it. And again, another funny kind of like man and dog, peeking out. And this is all. Good.
I was gonna say, the way the dog's head is looking, it almost looked like the dog is kind of like checking back on the guy behind him.
Yeah, what are you doing? Are you gonna help me out here? This guy's taking a picture. And I'll just do one more of these image discoveries because they go on and on. But this was a good example of just pressing the, capture every frame as I'm talking to this guy. So I have the camera in front of me or the phone in front of me, and I just have the button pressed, and it's taking these pictures one after another, and he's telling me a story. And just the scene here, he lost his wife, and he comes. This is now his living room, as he calls it, where he comes and does his gardening and I guess, soul searching and memory.
Is that a communal garden area? Is that
It is. I love community gardens are freaking awesome because they have such random, unexpected colors and shapes and juxtapositions of things. I shoot them all the time. So let's go to image invention, the other side of the coin. A lot of people, the image discovery, the street photographers, some of them are purists. They say, oh, you shouldn't app anything. You're a street photographer. You shouldn't do any of that. But hey, you know what? It's all what happens in the end that counts. If it's done with intention and the execution is technically sound, I don't see a problem with it. For instance, this picture here, this is image invention where you actually take an image and alter it greatly. This is the lost art of conversation, I think is what I call this. Some stupid ass. Anyway, here's the original picture. And of course, here's the final picture. And again, seeing this and feeling the story go on. How do I emphasize this? Well, first thing I want to do is take out the windows. And this is done with in my production app category. If you go back to look at the video and look under production apps, you'll see this is, oh, Jesus. Anyway, I should add notes. We should add notes to this afterwards, maybe, so we don't slow it up. Handy Photo is one that does some really nice retouching, and they also make the app called Anti-Crop. And Anti-Crop is a miracle. It's basically content-aware fill, but it works really, really well. And so you can see this is a little rough. It's not perfect. So that's step one. Step two, oops. I didn't have step two, but that's it. And then you crop it and you add a little bit of vignetting to it and you end up with that. So it's taking the steps. Again, this is a community garden. Love these, beam pillars, beam triangles or pyramids. And from there, I took Vintage Scene. Again, Vintage Scene is awesome. Toon Paint and Image Blender. Image Blender is another must-have. It basically blends two pictures together. It's like the layers in Photoshop, the blending modes in Photoshop. If you don't do any blending modes, you got to get at least this image blender and try it because it can really add a lot of dimension. And basically, I added the Toon Paint image to the Vintage Scene image. Used multiply and then got some type from the internet down here. Did that screen grab thing and added some film things to the edges and made it feel like what it is. Here's another one. Here's a really odd situation. A guy looking at a metal ball and then taking that with Tangled FX and Glaze, which is a painting app, and then combining the painting aspect of it together with the Tangled FX tune variation. It comes up with something like this. And again, I probably had 20 variations on this.
Yeah, I'm much more kind of painfully illustrative feel in that one.
Yeah, Glaze is a great painting app. It picks up on the tone and really redraws the thing with that in mind. And then just a funny little, combination of filters. As you can see here, this is a great example of anti-crop. You can see I don't have enough image on left and right, and a lot of times I want to post these in Instagram. By the way, I'm at Marcolina in Instagram. And I want to add some border to this. So use anti-crop, and basically it adds pixels. It clones pixels. It's content aware fill basically, and then actually did this with Handy Photo. Handy Photo is the big brother of anti-crop. Anti-crop's a little easier to use because it doesn't have as many tools. It just has one. I think that's the beauty of apps too. There's just one purpose for the most part.
Right.
It really is accessible for most people. I see the phone as sort of Photoshop and all the little apps as plugins for Photoshop.
Right, yeah.
Little modules.
Yeah, I think that apps can be counterproductive if they try to put too much in the app. If the interface for the app or the number of choices in the app just becomes too vast, it for me anyway, it kind of, I find it just not as fun to use.
Right, and that's what Adobe's doing with Photoshop right now. And we actually produced a video called the reimagination of Photoshop where they're taking parts from Photoshop and making apps. Like you've seen all these apps coming out from them. And then they all feed back into Photoshop because they can't really make money at selling apps. So they're making part of Creative Cloud. And then everything you do in those apps are then brought back together in Photoshop, which is a great idea.
Yeah, I did a show on that for TheFIX just about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Oh, okay, cool.
Photoshop Mix and Photoshop Fix back into Photoshop.
Sorry, I missed that. All right, so here's my mom, a couple months after my father's passing, and we're in the art gallery, and she's looking at these two little men. And like you said, you love taking pictures at galleries of people looking at art. Well, this is an example of that. And then using Disseminate, which is the break apart app, to make it just sort of take it to the next level and sort of make it more into a photo illustration than a photograph. And this is just a bunch of compositing work with my niece, where we took some goals, and this is actually Camera Awesome, and I'm showing Camera Awesome has these great textures, like I said, overlays and frames, and Tangled FX together. And this is butterflies. Don't you love butterflies? But they're a little cliche for me. I'm sorry, but. So what can I do to the butterflies? Well, maybe I'll take them and, clone them and use with Photor. And then Fold Defy is another TWiP app. Again, as a graphic designer, I've always wanted to have an app to make things that actually look like paper is folding. Well, Fold Defy blows everything else away. I mean, you can get it on the desktop now, too. You can put your own folds in. You can put these little creases and wrinkles in the edges. It's freaking amazing. It's so realistic. Adds grain to the picture, etc.
You're going to cost me some money here. I'm going to be buying apps here. Yeah. I knew that I would be.
And I'm just clicking through a bunch here. Here's an example of, I had mentioned the orange peel on the counter that I referenced as just sort of like a picture you grab, for future use. And then taking that and merging it with some old engravings.
Very nice. I love that.
Something like this.
That's great.
And this is another 3D app called Matter. You got it? If you don't, you probably know Matter. But
yeah, I have that. It's wickedly fun. Wickedly fun.
It is. But take it to the next level. Why don't you, take it into Meld and add some geometry or the Rose Compass is from Meld. Meld is a program that has all these little buckets of icons and graphics that are transparent pings that you can overlay on images. And then the lines are from Triangulamator. And it's all put back together in Image Blender. You're using lighten only on the lines, and then the birds are thrown in here for good effect.
Yeah. No, it's totally, it's so fun. I mean, I find that I do a lot of compositing and, sort of standard compositing, big files, lots of layers, smart objects, stuff like that. But I also love doing compositing on the phone or on the iPad.
Right. So this is my daughter, and just using, a quick tip for type is, you see this word summer awaits. If you go to any type website, you can type, usually this is called myfont.com. You can type in any word you want and then set it up with any image. And then if you long hold, tap the resulting image, you can save it to your iPhone with an alpha channel. So you can basically steal fonts. You're not stealing fonts because it's pretty low res, and you can hide it in a corner like this. You can't do anything big, or you'll see the pixels on the pin.
Right. Yeah.
But myfont.com, you can choose any font, type anything you want in, and preview it, and then long tap and hold. Save to your computer that way.
Right. Yeah.
And lastly, in this image invention area is a piece I did for Adobe to show off Photoshop Touch, which is sort of a program that they've disregarded in favor of Mix, and Mix has come a long way, and I think it's definitely very usable. I think Photoshop Touch came in the category of one of those apps that had just too many bells and whistles. Little hard to use, but the only app of its kind at the time. There's others now called we're a very good one called Leonardo that can save back to Photoshop, and then Lamineer Pro is another one that does very, very similar to Photoshop Touch. If you miss Photoshop Touch and you want to put things back into Photoshop afterwards. Okay.
Well, that was quite a lot there. And, I knew talking to you that I would learn about so many new apps. That's one of the reasons that I love to sit down with other people, app practitioners, is that, you just learn about new apps. And it was the same when I was talking with Dan Burkholder, and I knew that would be the same talking with you. And so what is there like some hot new app that you just recently discovered that you're using a lot these days?
I think, like I said, the one that I mentioned earlier.
Is it Polar?
Polar, yeah. Polar is cool. There's Max Curve, which is it's all based on curves, and you can center images in high resolution back. Right now, what I've honestly been doing, full circle here, full disclosure too. I was in mobile photography land for 5-6 years doing lectures and writing books, and I recently just dumped all my Canon equipment and got the Sony A7R2, which is a 42 megapixel camera. We do a lot of video here as well, so it's a great 4K camera as well. So it's a great tool for the office. But I'm learning how 42 megapixels is pretty fun. A lot of meat there, a lot of tonality. Yeah. So I'm basically been transferring my photos automatically from my Sony to my camera. Now I'm looking for apps that can hold on to, well, not 42 megapixels. It's not necessary, but most of that resolution. So they're the ones I'm tracking down now. So like Max Curves is one. Of course, you got Lightroom, which is great. Lightroom Mobile, which can interact with your desktop version of your image, and you can work it on your laptop, and it saves a low res on your phone, but you can then open it on your computer. So that's a great workflow as well for DSLR pictures. Ultralight is a cool one. The new type program from Tin Rocket called This. It's really stupid, and it's not really a photo app, but it allows you to add sort of notations on images in a really nice way. Word Swag is another type app that I love. It just automatically generates really beautiful type combinations, and you can tweak them. Video stuff, Video Enhance, I would recommend for video stuff. All in one.
The list goes on and on.
Yeah, Polar, so yeah. Anyway, and you can see them all. If you stop the video earlier, you can write down all those apps you saw on those screens, but
or at least the ones that appear on the first screen of the group, because I noticed that some of them had multiple dots underneath of them.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, I'm crazy that way.
Yeah, I know. Me too. In fact, there are days like today is one of those days where I have a lot of deadline projects I have to get to, but I have a couple of apps that I've gotten recently that I really haven't had time to sit down and have quality time exploring those apps and pushing the boundaries. So I need to push through my deadline so I can have some free time to do that.
Yeah, try Diana too. It's named after the old Diana camera. It's just sort of a random, you shake your phone and it combines two pictures in an unusual way. So, and don't be afraid to use the random dice. I think that's one of the best things of mobile photography is that you can discover things you would never, ever find in Photoshop because of the randomization. A lot of apps have the dice that you can roll. Don't be afraid of that. You can always sort of, push and pull different settings after you see something you like and get
Although the one thing about Diana photos that I'm hoping is going to change, and I've contacted the developer and asked him about this, is that currently it only exports at 1536 by 1536. So I'd like it to give me, more my full resolution of what my phone's capturing, but hopefully that'll be coming soon. All right. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Dan. That was just a great magical mystery tour through some of the many different type of apps that one might choose to use. And so where can people find more about you on the web?
Well, you'll hopefully put some links up at marcolina.com. Marcolina.com is our main, design site. Come to us for anything you need, video, interactive, print. And on Instagram, it's at Marcolina. I have a Flickr site as well. I think there's a LinkedIn, which has a lot of cool stuff in it. And of course, iTunes. Just type in Marcolina Design in iTunes and you'll see all our apps there. They're all basically iPad apps. There's one iPhone app called App Alchemy Pocket. And all those are worth, really, the Mobile Master series has probably 200-300 different photographers represented there with hundreds and hundreds of pieces, different styles, the interviews, techniques. It's really worth taking a look at.
Great, cool. And I will definitely have all of your links up on the show page at thisweekinphoto.com/TheFIX for people to take a look at.
Great.
So thanks again. Yeah, thanks again so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed the conversation and learning more about some of your design work and the behind-the-scenes stories of that Photoshop 2010 Odyssey and everything.
And it's great finally meeting you. I followed you for a while, and it's cool actually hanging out.
Cool. All right. Well, take care, and we'll see you on Instagram.
All right. Great. Please do.
All right. Well, that was excellent. I don't know about you, but I've got a long list of apps here that I've been jotting down that I'm going to have to go and purchase and download and take for a test drive. So that's going to cost me a few bucks. Thanks, Dan. But I knew the job was dangerous when I took it, to quote the old Super Chicken cartoons from those thrilling days of yesteryear. I knew that I could not have a conversation with Dan Marcolina without coming away purchasing a bunch of new apps. Speaking of apps, if you are on the iOS platform, definitely think about heading over to the App Store and checking out all of the free ebooks that Marcolina Design has up there. Just do a search on the App Store for Marcolina Design and you will find them. A lot of great stuff, including the Mobile Masters ebook, both the original and the second edition, which contain a lot of really wonderful mobile photography, very inspiring stuff. It'll definitely be a creative kick in the pants for you after you sit down and look at some of that imagery. And if you're in need of design services, do check out Dan's design site, marcolina.com. A lot of really excellent cutting-edge design there. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of TheFIX. You can subscribe to the show by going to the webpage, thisweekinphoto.com/TheFIX, and then over on the right side of the page, there's a box to subscribe. There's also an email list you can sign up for to be notified when new episodes are published, and there's also some exclusive subscriber bonuses. If you want to get in touch with me, leave feedback about the show, or perhaps make a suggestion about future topics you'd like to see, or future guests you'd like to see interviewed, go to the top of the page and click on the Contact Us link, and that'll open up a little contact form. Make sure you open the menu in the middle of that form and choose this show, TheFIX, to ensure that your message reaches me. All right. I'm Sean Duggan. Thanks very much for watching. Catch you next week on TheFIX.